Hey guys, so this video is going to be about rates and PIDs. I know that's a very controversial subject, and I know a lot of people are going to be commenting on this video about what does this and what does that and how this happens and why does that happen. All I'm trying to do is give you guys a basic understanding of what goes through my mind when I'm basically setting up a quad or tuning or whatever you guys think that I do that's wizardry that you can't figure out how to do. Let me talk about that, and I'll talk about how I got to where I am, and you'll kind of you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about when I show you. It's very simple. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to actually set up a screen record so I can show you guys exactly what I'm doing on the computer. And I mean, it's going to be super simple, super straightforward, and hopefully you'll learn a lot from it. So first off, I'm going to show you what I'm going to show you. This is my 5-inch Alien. This is the quad that I fly with in every single one of my videos. Pretty much the exact setup. There's nothing different about this aircraft than what you see on all of my video descriptions. All the parts are the same. This is it. This is the craft that I fly every single day when I go out and fly, and it's very similar to what I've been flying for the last 8 months. Very little has changed, and I'll explain that in this video. So I'm going to put this down. It's already connected via USB. You can see the USB cable here, and we're going to go down here to the screen, and this is the setup. This is exactly what I see, and this is exactly how I have this aircraft set up. Now, every single aircraft of mine is slightly different. The rates are usually the same unless something's happened to the aircraft, like it's been in a hard crash, and maybe one number will be off by a very slight amount, like maybe 0.6 or something like that, or 0.01, sorry. And yeah, I mean, the PIDs are pretty much identical on most of the quads. However, it does change regarding to where I am, what the altitude is, kind of what the humidity is, how hot it is. Things do change. Sometimes I get oscillations. Sometimes I have to detune for certain situations if I want to make sure and ensure that I'm going to have smooth video, because that is sometimes the priority over the feeling of the quad. You can pretty much fly a quad and make it do anything you want without having it feel really good. Now, there is a balance between having it feel really good, which to me means having really high P's and having semi-high I's and as low as possible on the D. To me, that is what feels good. It's very snappy, it's very responsive. I mean, if you tune it correctly and you have the right numbers, you're going to have very minimal bounce back, and the aircraft's going to feel really responsive. And for me, I think low D and high P actually gives you that like really snappy sound. Like the way that my quad sounds kind of different from other people's quads, and I think it's just because I'm over tuning things in a certain way that makes it do that. I'm fighting the PID controller, which to me, I like the way that feels and I like the way it sounds. So that's kind of why I do that. It reminds me of PID controller 1. It feels very similar to something I already know, and that's why I'm sticking with it. And the whole goal of all of this is to be consistent. You want to make sure that every single thing you're doing is consistent with what you already know. Because if you start adding new things every single week, you start adding new components, you start adding new props, you start trying all this stuff out. I mean, it's cool to try stuff out, but if you have a formula that works for you and you don't feel like it's hindering you in any way, obviously if you're down on power, you're running 3S or something and you want to get more power, or you're running a motor that you don't necessarily like the way it feels and you remember something better, if you're trying to find something that works for you, that's cool. But just know, if you have something that works for you really well, don't go and change it just because someone's telling you to change it. I'm flying stuff that I've been flying for a long time, and I'm used to it. That's why I like it. That's why I haven't changed, because I feel like it doesn't have any faults about it that I can improve upon, or I'm not going to gain very much from doing one thing or doing another, and it's always, you always gain something and then you always lose something. So for me, this aircraft fills all of my requirements. It does everything I need it to do, and I have no complaints with it. That's why I don't change. So let's go back to the screen over here, and let's talk about rates, because I know so many people want to talk about rates and they want to know what my rates are. Here are my rates. This changes pretty frequently. I've been slowly bumping up RC rate and slowly bumping down rate. And what that does is RC rate, basically the higher the RC rate and the lower the rate, this increases the feel of the stick linearly, and this basically adds a tiny bit of expo. So when you're talking about something being linear, let's go over to the actual rates page. And I know this is going to be a lot of information, and I'm going to try to keep this video short. And I'll see in the questions or in the comments below like what you guys understood and what you didn't understand. But let's see, like I've had a lot of people say, what is your roll rate? Like, it's super fast. How do you get it to go super fast? So it's not anything crazy. I think it's like 1167 degrees per second, which is not very fast. I mean, I've seen people with way faster roll rates than me. It's only 3.4 rolls per second, and I try to keep pitch and roll consistent. Both of them I want to roll and flip the same exact speed. I don't want anything to flip faster, or I want it to be consistent. Like I said, everything is about consistency. My yaw rate is a little bit slower at 857 degrees per second, but I mean, I don't know, it's just like everyone thinks I have this crazy roll rate, and it's not a crazy roll rate. Now I can tell you that I do some kind of little, it's like almost a trick that I didn't even realize I did, but if you couple yaw and roll together, it'll actually spin faster than it's supposed to. So you can see the graphic right there. If I start coupling yaw with it, it actually spins faster than if I just did a roll. So I do couple yaw with my rolls and flips so that it will do a little bit faster of a roll rate. But I mean, it's not anything special. That's like, and I don't have a crazy roll rate, and why I say I don't have that is because I do want something that is consistent, and having a medium to fast roll rate is good, but having a too fast of a roll rate, you can't really get it doughy around the center of the stick, which is what I want, because I want it to be smooth and I want it to be precise, and the only real way to do that is to keep it a little bit doughy around the center of the stick for me, because I'm older and I can't get away with running very little expo. Yeah, I mean, over time you realize that, hey, this isn't consistent, and I'm starting to suffer because, you know, I'm doing one thing and it's trying to fight me, or I'm doing one thing and it's not what I expected it to do. So in the end, you really want it the quad to fly like you want it to fly. I will say that my rates are fairly good baseline for people. If you want a fast roll rate but you still want it doughy around center, I will give you the disclaimer that my PIDs that I showed you right there will not work on your quad. They might work decently, it might be a good baseline, but I can tell you right now that the pitch P is probably going to be too high, the eyes are probably going to be too high, and all of this stuff relates to what firmware you're using. If there's a special firmware, an older firmware you have, you might actually get oscillations, and then you don't know what to do, and you start decreasing one number, you don't realize what you're doing. So I would not suggest that these PIDs that I just showed you are a good baseline, but if you have a quad that's well-tuned, or sorry, not well-tuned, but well put together, and you have similar electronics to me, you can try to use it as a baseline. Now I need to discuss one more thing with people that a lot of people have really not known what it stands for, and that's TPA, and that stands for throttle PID attenuation. And what that does basically is the number that's in there, say like right here on my quad I have 0.48. 0.48 is basically, we'll just round it up. We'll round it up to 0.5. Sorry, I just turned my computer off because the battery was dying. But let's round that up to 0.5. So if you have 0.5 for TPA, basically TPA starts at 50% unless you're running some special TPA, which is in the advanced settings, which I don't use, and I know a lot of people are going to ask about that. So TPA starts at 50% of your throttle range. So when you actually go up to 50%, that's when your throttle PID attenuation starts. As soon as you go beyond 50%, so say 65%, that's when it's starting to attenuate the PIDs, or lower those numbers down so that it doesn't create oscillation with the higher RPM, because higher RPM obviously will increase resonant frequency, increase RPM of the motors, the props, if they're not balanced correctly. Like it can introduce a lot of things. Also, not to mention that thing is like screaming, and if you have an imbalanced motor, like I just said, it's going to create some vibration that you want to get rid of, and the only real way to do that is to put in TPA. So if you put 0.5 in there, basically when you go from 50% to 100%, if you have 10 as your roll P, it's going to reduce it to 5 because it reduces it 50%. Now a lot of these things can be adjusted to suit certain needs. A lot of aircraft, the lower the TPA, the better. I'd say the better built aircraft with a nicer equipment is probably going to be able to run with a lower TPA, but again, that's not like a given or anything like that, but that's kind of a general state of, or a rule of thumb. If you have a really nice aircraft, you should be able to get away with less TPA. If you have an aircraft that's beat up or has low quality components on it, you're probably going to have to increase your TPA, because the higher RPM you go, the more vibrations are going to be introduced into the system. And yeah, so basically I run about 50% TPA because I don't want to have to deal with oscillations at full throttle, and in some circumstances regarding to where I am, maybe the altitude or the humidity, sometimes I get oscillations, but not very often at full throttle, maybe around mid-range. And some of that could be due to what motor I'm using, and that's kind of why I've stuck with the Luminaire 2206 2350 kV, because it is a smoother motor, and honestly I think it's because of the lower powered magnets. You notice that these motors are not coggy compared to like some of the newer motors that are super powerful. So yeah, I mean, there are drawbacks to increasing power, obviously more amp draw, but you have to run certain type of magnets, a certain type of winding, certain type of stator. There are so many little nuances that people don't realize that they're introducing to a system. Like T-Motor's been making motors forever, and you have these motor manufacturers just popping out of nowhere and creating motors and going, oh, look at the power, look at the power. When in reality, T-Motor kind of is like, you know, well, you're going to get mid-throttle oscillations there, you're going to have certain problems here, you're going to have certain problems there, so there's always drawbacks to everything. I guess the moral of this video would be to make sure that the things that you're doing to your aircraft, the things that you want out of it, you're meeting those requirements. If you want more power, you're obviously going to have to sacrifice some flight time. If you want more, I don't know, flight time, then you're going to have to sacrifice some power. So all of these things are relevant, and all of them kind of ebb and flow and give and take. So the same thing goes with the rates and tuning. If you want the aircraft to do one thing, but you don't want it to do this undesirable thing, then you're gonna have to give a little bit. So take that into consideration when you're doing a tune, or when you're sitting around with the aircraft saying, look, I want it to do this, but I don't want it to do that. So can you meet in the middle? Can you get a fast roll rate and also have it doughy in the middle, or something to that, a characteristic that you want? But hopefully you guys got some information from this, and if you have any questions or you have anything that you want me to talk about, I know this isn't my average like vloggy style. This is more just a gear based, talking about the whole electronics and the background of why these things do the things they do. So if you have any questions, or you have anything that you want to talk about, or you want to ask me, please put it in the comments below. Liking and sharing and subscribing is also accepted. And I also just started a Patreon account, because I'm going to be traveling a lot, like in the near future, to be going and visiting local communities and documenting their FPV lifestyle and putting it on the Rotor Riot channel. So that'll be also listed in the description below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and it's getting dark now and we're almost at 15 minutes. So have a good day and keep shredding and don't give up. Thank you guys. Arbitrary numbers, so you don't need to worry about like, oh my god, this fucking plane. What are you doing? You're so freaking far away. Just go away.